Hey everybody, I'm Francesca Maxime and this is WiseGirl, and I'm so glad that you are joining me. It is just about 5 o'clock, so you're probably in the car or on the train if you're headed home from work after this crazy week back at work after the holidays, or maybe you are at home. So if you're watching this on Facebook Live, great, and if you're watching the recorded version of it, that's fine too. I wanted to talk a little bit about New Year's resolutions and the infamous one about losing weight or getting in shape, or that one that we seem to break on January 2nd. And I wanted to share something with you because there's been a lot of changes in my life over the last couple of years. And one of them has been a real shift in how and what I do as it relates to food and exercise in my body, and my whole idea about what it means to be healthy and how I really feel about myself. And this all is stemming out of a conversation I had with a friend of mine yesterday. And she was saying that she basically is sort of back to the, not so much the New Year's idea, but just the idea that she needs to sort of change habits and buckle down and lose some poundage. And I was like, yeah, totally, I understand that. And I thought about it because when I got home from the holidays, I had thought that I had gained weight, and in fact, I had lost some weight. And in fact, year to date, as it turns out, I lost, I think, 38 pounds and have maintained it for a year, from January 4th to January 5th of 2017. So the question is how is this any different from anything I've done in the past, or why might this be inspiring to you in terms of mindful eating or anything like that? I always said that I never wanted to feel like I was going to be in a place where I was going to be stuck always resisting, always using willpower to not want to eat the cookie or not want to eat the cheeseburger or whatever it is, that I really wanted to somehow get rid of that desire to kind of eat that thing that, on the other hand, I knew really wasn't good for me. And that desire often came from a real sense of dis-ease within myself, not really because I was hungry. There's an old Buddhist or Zen saying called eat when you're tired eat when you're sleepy. No, I'm tired. Eat when you're hungry and sleep when you're tired. Yes, I really am tired, actually. I woke up at 5 o'clock this morning and yesterday. Apologies. And when you kind of tend to sort of what your body needs, then, things kind of start falling into place. But the problem is, of course, we often disregard what our body needs because we're always trying to push ourselves to get to a place where we don't really necessarily need to be, because our version of success is so hyper competitive and so built on an idea of achievement as opposed to being happy and what it means to actually be able to just really enjoy the life that we actually do have, as opposed to always trying to tumble into the future, as one of my meditation teachers told me recently. I love that saying, because when we're not in the present moment, we're not able to attune to things like mindful eating or sleeping. Now, back to the 38 pounds that I happened to lose. Okay, one of the reasons why I ended up doing that is because I had lost a desire to eat meat and fish and animal stuff, because I had gone along with these sort of Buddhist principles that, advocated for non-killing, non-harming. Now, I'm not saying you have to adopt a spiritual perspective, and I'm not saying that no meat is right for you. As a matter of fact, a lot of folks who are really hyper energetic and really, have a lot of energy and high metabolisms need to get some protein in animal form, if you will. And so I'm totally down with that. And I'm not vegan. I eat cheese and yogurt and that kind of thing. But I switched my diet mainly because I didn't want to be responsible for the furry creature factor, which is really in line with my other activities. I love animals. I always have. I have had cats my whole life and would have dogs too, and horses and a farm and all of those things if I didn't live in an apartment in Brooklyn. But that idea of cutting that out was not hard. The other big thing was in Buddhist teachings, it says no misuse of intoxicants. So that kind of means, okay, well, no more alcohol. And I dropped it like that. It was not difficult. There was no part of me that once I kind of heard, okay, this is sort of a code of conduct really that one can kind of adhere to, because there are deeper beliefs and deeper truths at work here. And so no more calories from booze, you know, those fun pina coladas that you get when you go on vacation down in the Caribbean. Yeah, no more of those. I'm a seltzer water kind of gal. And then there's this whole idea of, in my case, doing yoga, not just exercise, but really yoga as a spiritual practice, as it was originally conceived millennia ago. And the idea of yoking energies and providing a certain arena for our mind, body, and breath to all connect in a way that is congruous, and that we can bring back our disassociated selves to unison states where we can then feel more in sync. And I think that some of those principles, along with, you know, I did tracking of calories. I made sure that I also exercised a bit by continuing with my tennis playing and going out in the park and doing some mindful walking. All of that really helped because I knew that there was sort of a higher calling, if you will. I was not trying to resist anything. Grace, if you will, sort of entered me in the sense that I knew that there was something more that I wanted for myself that was really a sense of happiness and well-being. And if you can fall into that and somehow choose to befriend yourself in that regard, I think it's so much easier. Because I see people that I'm related to around the holiday dinner table, and, you know, this year they were sort of looking at me like, wow, you look great, what'd you do, blah, 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 whatever. And I was like, well, I said, you know, I just changed my lifestyle a little bit. And they were like, oh, I can't, you know, it's so hard, it's so hard, it's so hard for me. And I just feel really bad because the craving is that suffering, the resistance to the way things are is actually what creates the suffering more so than the way things are. So for example, if I were to continue to eat flour and sugar, which I kind of pretty much have tried to give up on and haven't had in a while and don't miss it and am happy without it. If I had tried to continue to have flour and sugar, which I find kind of like alcohol, it wouldn't work for me. It's not really a natural state for me, okay? It's like processed foods and all that other kind of stuff. I just tend to eat a lot of things like beans and squash and fruit and bananas and, you know, may not sound very sexy, but that's okay. It's plenty of nutrition and it's good for me and I feel better. So, you know, what am I trying to get at here? What I'm trying to get at is when I sort of found these teachings and I sort of found this way of being, if you will, that I could sort of trust and fall into in terms of being in the present moment, making sure that I had what I needed for my body in terms of food consumption and the right amount of calories for weight loss, the right amount of, you know, exercise and stuff like that. It wasn't a difficult place to maintain. It became a lifestyle. So it's not one of those diet states where you end up saying, I'm going to go on a cleanse for a month and then I'm going to do this thing with hot peppers and lemons or grapefruits or cabbages or whatever, you know? I mean, I love grapefruits and cabbages, but I would hate to only eat them for 2 weeks straight just because I wanted to lose 10 pounds that I'd gain back in a minute. So I guess why I'm trying to say all this is because these teachings for me was sort of the answer for everything, the answer to everything, meaning that, you know, sort of a set of principles whereby there's some ethics, there's some morality where you can look at and say, well, yeah, this makes total sense to me. I don't need to kill anything or be responsible for that. So I don't need to eat meat. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm saying that's just my choice, but it made it easier for me. It also advocates, meaning the teachings, the Buddhist teachings, right speech and right livelihood. So what's right speech? It means when what you say is, you know, truthful and it doesn't cause harm and that it's kind and that it's timely so that you make sure that you're not trying to get in the last word. You want to make sure that you're furthering communication between two people, not causing further distancing. So when you can kind of adopt that kind of a principle instead of saying, oh, you know, I just want to get into a fight with my partner or my friends or whatever it is, it becomes part of the umbrella. Right livelihood, for example. You know, if you have ethical quandaries at work, it can wear on your soul. It can wear on your head, your heart. I know as a broadcast journalist, we've seen a really tough last few years during this election cycle that we've had for a lot of my colleagues. And I know it really is very taxing, and a lot of folks are drawn to the kinds of behaviors that aren't all that healthy because they're just trying to keep the train going. And I have a ton of sympathy for that. I've been there. And I also know that now I have a choice to not continue to engage in those kind of activities so I can make room for a healthier life and one that's closer to my, to my true life's purpose, which is always unfolding. I think everybody's is really, but we need to just remain curious about it and think about that. So I guess in some, because I don't want to keep on babbling on forever here, in terms of mindful eating, there are a lot of different things that are going to work differently for different people. Clearly, there's no one-size-fits-all policy. However, I would say that the most difficult thing about mindful eating, maintaining the kind of relationship with what you choose to consume, that is really more related to what our state is underneath things before we go and grab the brownie or grab the ice cream. What are we thinking about? What are we worried about? Do we have concepts about ourselves that are rigid and limiting when it comes to the ways in which we feel other people relate to us based on our physical appearance? Is there shame involved? Is there judgment? Do we have voices in our head, the critical voice, inner critic saying you should be this way or you should be that way? And if so, whose voice is it really? Is it our voice? Or is it the voice of some kind of conditioning or habit pattern that we heard as a kid growing up, school teachers, bullies in school, those kinds of things that somehow seep into our skin a little bit, and then we somehow take them on and in some ways become loyal to our self-concept in that regard. And so instead of kind of being able to envision something beyond that, sometimes we get stuck. And sometimes we get stuck in the whole concept that, we're going to give it our best effort. We're going to try. We're going to really, give it all our willpower. But, we're not surprised when it falls apart. So what I'm suggesting is instead of sort of having that storyline out there already, perhaps just suggesting that there's a different storyline. That the storyline that you can tell yourself is my conditioning, meaning that inner critic, that voice that may tell me that whatever it is I don't like about myself is true, that's just a voice. And, you can battle it and you can say, I see you, I recognize you, I know you. You're that little guy that sits on my shoulder and tells me all this nasty stuff. And you can say, hey, I see you. And now that part of me, I'm just going to let you sit there and be there. I'm going to move beyond you. I'm going to say, here, go sit in the corner, play with these toys, do whatever it is. I'm going to take this other part of me that's more this adult part of me that says, wow, I actually really like it when I feel better and eat differently, and when I take walks or exercise, or when I make myself a priority and give myself a half an hour, 10 minutes to meditate, take a yoga class, go to the gym, do whatever it is that's good for you. Maybe prepare a special meal for yourself and that kind of thing, because you're getting more in touch with who you really are. I don't know if some of you may have read the article that I wrote for Huffington Post and for Arianna Huffington's new venture called Thrive Global, and it was entitled Beyond Shame Resilience, and it's basically about the concept of self-love and how our true nature, our core inner goodness, is separate from that conditioning and that voice of the inner critic that we have. And that our true nature is deep down already intuitive and knows all of what we do and don't need. And so every time we feel out of sync and we're going to reach for that brownie or doing whatever it is that we're really not happy about at the end of the day, because that little inner critic voice starts to chirp up, we can always just go back to that knowledge that we are actually way beyond that we're, powerful beyond measure, we're amazing creatures, and that if we can shift our perspective on how we relate to what otherwise is the suffering of the diet and that willpower feeling that we have, and just sort of surrender to the fact that, hey, listen, I'm going to admit to the fact that, lots of sugar and flour really isn't that good for me. It doesn't work for me. And I spend more time worrying about whether or not I'm going to have the cookie if I take on this idea of, well, I'm free to have the cookie. It's a free country. I could do this if I want to just say, yeah, I could. And I have. And I don't need to. So in any case, these are just a few thoughts on mindful eating, sort of more of a little ramble at this point, but I continue to, enjoy using the Facebook Live platform, and I know that Facebook is going to continue to encourage people to do it, so I will always still post my WiseGirl videos during the week as usual, but I wanted to say hi to y'all and wish you a happy new year and invite you to consider more of a inner wisdom approach this year to some of the totalities that exist within you, which is that if you yourself can recognize your own inner magnificence, just start there. See what that feels like. Go look in the mirror and say, like, you know what? I'm actually pretty amazing. And you can sort of hear that little voice say, oh no, you suck. You can laugh at it and say, oh, you're just the voice. But me, the real me, underneath all that, yeah, no, she doesn't want the brownie and she thinks that you stink, so be quiet. Thank you. Just see, and you don't have multiple personality disorder or anything like that. Just see if you can't separate out, that personality, that conditioning, that inner critic, that voice from who you really are. And give yourself a break this weekend and go for a walk or something outside if it's not too cold out, and maybe make yourself a healthy meal. And, if you want to talk a little bit more about any of this, feel free to shoot me an email or write some comments down below. You know where to find me on social media. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Happy New Year.